Thank you very much, Thilo Sarrazin. There'll now be time for some questions. You can address them to somebody with a microphone. Thilo Sarrazin will stay on the podium. Who has a question?
My name is Kim. I want to thank you for a good speech.
It's not loud enough. Please speak into the microphone.
Thank you for a good speech. I will ask you, is it compatible with your political views being a social democrat? Because the social democrats that we know in Denmark, they are some sort of in favor of free immigration to a certain degree and easy access to social benefits. So I wonder, what you're saying sounds very plausible, but it doesn't really fit with your political views otherwise.
Well, I joined the Social Democratic Party in 1973. It was a time when the Ostpolitik by Willy Brandt was going on. This was the one reason for joining the party. And other reasons were, as an economist, I believe in a strong government. And as an economist, I also believe in a fair amount of redistribution. And I also believe in fair opportunities for everybody and in a good educational system. These were the social democratic values of the time before the World War I, when social democratic parties were founded in Germany, Denmark, Sweden, and so on. And I think this still holds true. Parties are of course, as all organizations do, and sometimes they are on the one side and sometimes on the other side. May I perhaps give you a little drawing? What is this? That this is a party line, and that are the dissenters.
Right, thank you. There was a gentleman over there, and then down there and there, number 3. Yes?
Yeah. My name is Tunjay Mishra. I come originally from India. Thank you for a wonderful speech. What I see coming from that part of the continent is that there is a need of a historical debate on Islamization. One thing is the immigration, Islamic immigration, but there has been a loss of millions of lives the way Islam invaded Asia. Very well illustrated by V.S. Naipaul, the Nobel Prize winning scientist. But my question to you is this, that seeing into the facts, forgetting the long historical Islamization of Asia, but the present, when it is accessible to all journalists. 1947, in Pakistan, there were 22% of the population was minorities. Today, it is only 2%. 20% of population is gone. Isn't that a stuff for the so-called left-wing media people to highlight? Why is it so? And I think that there is a need for not only economic argument, but historical analysis. How do you think, or don't you think this is also relevant for Europe to take that into account?
Well, it is of course relevant. This was partly because I wrote my book, but it's unfortunately the case that the knowledge of history is dwindling. It is dwindling in the schools, in the educational system. It is certainly dwindling within the media. Most people don't have a sound, compact of historical facts in the back of their head. And if you do not have that, every article, the commentary in the media seems to be in itself convincing. If you know nothing about Islam, then you are dependent on the information who is given to you in a specific article, and as long as this article in itself seems to be not sufficiently convincing, one says, okay, this is the truth. And what one would have to do is to bring a big set of facts into the heads of the people. But how to do that? That's the question.
Hello. Mr. Sarrazin, I was just asking, you were a member of the board of the Deutsche Bundesbank, and you were somehow forced to retire, but as far as I know, no one could fire you. So why did you step down?
Well, that's a good question. I stepped down because the pressure that was being exercised on me made it for me impossible to do the work as I should, as I thought or think they should be done. And also I was unable to express myself clearly enough on the matters which we discussed today. Because it is one thing to write a book, and it is another thing to make press interviews and public statements in a row and go to talk shows and so on, and to state your point and be at the same time not a controversial public servant or the civil servant. So in the end, I decided it would better for me as a person. It would be better for my wife and for my children, and it would be better for the cause that I represented to step down. But I admit to you, it was very enticing to stay and to confront the storm. This is right. But I decided otherwise.
Mr. Bergström, would you kindly tell us how your first book avoided to be suppressed and never come out? Because that's very important for the Danish press and all of us.
How my first book avoided? Yeah, this was quite simple. I had written several books in my life. The last one in 1996 about the euro. It was my first book about the euro, but these books had not a moderate success. This means they went largely unnoticed. So, and when I was finance minister in the state of Berlin, I of course concerned myself with the reasons for the financial the problems of Berlin, and when I had success in my office, I started to address those reasons publicly. And then I was in the midst of a discussion of the German welfare system, and this made me not a controversial figure. This was at the beginning of 2008, and then after several publishing houses came to me and wanted me to write a book about the welfare state, and I answered always, if I write what I think, then I I can't hold a political office anymore, so I can write these books only after I have resigned from my political office. That I did in 2009 and went to the Deutsche Bundesbank, which was not a political appointment. So, and one publishing house had, in the end, they convinced me by being stubborn and asking again and again. So I said, okay, I will write this book, but I will write it only when I am safely away from politics, and it may take some time. And then I had this interview in the fall of the 2010, and it caused such a public stir that I decided to proceed with my book. And then the book was published, and then the course of events took their course. And even the publishing house had no idea what would be going on. They got my book over the course of a year. Always when the chapter that was finished, it was sent to the lecturer. What can I change? What do you think? Mostly came the answer, oh, it is too long, it's too complicated, and it's hardly interesting for the public. And only after all 8 chapters had been written, they had an idea that this book might be controversial, but not. But it was not more but a vague idea. The first edition had the 25,000 copies. This and the first edition is mostly that what the publishing house thinks that the book will sell. And the first edition was sold out after 2 days. And the publishing house was surprised, and so was I.
My name is Torben Karok, and I would just ask you, for those of us who want to know what goes on in Germany, the discussion, can you recommend any media on the web, newspapers, radio stations, etc., both in German and in English, something we could use? Thank you.
There are some good blogs. For example, if you take die Achse des Guten, it's a blog which is not pretty good, and there you find some the very helpful commentaries, and there the newspaper which is not relatively neutral is the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. It's still, it's good. Not always, in my opinion, but still they're very balanced and good. The periodical, which is published weekly, is the Wirtschaftswoche. It is an economic periodical. So not all is bad in the German media landscape.
Mr. Sarrazin, I have read your book already 2 years ago when it came out, and was really impressed by its very accurate analysis, and I felt immediately, like probably everyone here, that the problems you are speaking about are very identical to the problems in this country. Now, do you agree that somehow at the bottom, the problem is a cultural one. Since we are not, I mean, the Western world somehow created the main part of the problems within the last centuries. And now we have to deny that and recognize everything. If we recognized our cultural past and present and kept to it, would it be better? Would it further a change in society? And it has to come in the schools, in the universities and so on, but don't you see it that way? And then there's one little thing more. Have you, as Lars have been, personally been threatened in Germany? Ist ein Sicherheitsdienst am Werk, Sie zu beschützen?
When I have the public appearances which have been announced in public speech, a public speech or reading with the admission of the public, that I am being accompanied by the Landeskriminalamt in Berlin. This is the criminal police then accompanies me. So, I was never threatened, not that I know. There were threats in the net and so on, but I was never threatened. And the Islamic community seemed to be entirely disinterested in Thilo Sarrazin. There was a poll under the Turkish people in Germany, 3.5 million. After 1 year after the book, more than the half of them had never heard the name Thilo Sarrazin. This is also a matter of cultural integration, if I may say so. A very good indicator. They are very self-confident, and as far as they deal with this analysis, they seem to agree. Many of them, not especially the younger ones.
I think my question of culture as well.
Yeah, cultural. Well, it's a human fault that you always treasure what you not have, and that you cease to treasure what you have. Therefore, we don't daily thank God that we are safe, that we are not hungry and not thirsty, and that our flats are heated. And so we also tend not to treasure our culture, which has brought us all that. Instead of that, we are longing for things which we do not have, and which that a civilization never can deliver. This is not a sense of life, beauty, success, whatever, equal rights for everybody. Many things which are also important, but which can be solved only on the individual level, and which they cannot be delivered by a society. And so by asking from our society things which they can not give, and by neglecting those things which it can deliver, it may be that we destroy the foundations of exactly this society.
We'll take 3 more questions, and I'm going to answer the first one. Being a man of the press, I made most of my living in the press. I was intrigued by your observation that 70% of the media you think is politically correct in Germany. If you think back, I'm not suggesting you're that old, but if you think back to the Weimar Republic, for example, there seems to have been a much more varied press. I mean, you had all kinds of opinions, as thousands of newspapers with different opinions. Some were to the right, some were capitalist, some were socialist, some were communist. Why this convergence of opinion in the mainstream media? What has created it?
Well, that is a good question. You can only state the fact, and there is interesting research by a professor, Dr. Keplinger, who teaches at the University of Mainz, and he asked the journalists about the picture of themselves, and they did a very intelligent kind of asking. He asked them whether they thought they were more on the left side or more on the right side of the mainstream in their school class, and whether they were more on the left or on the right side of their parents. And 80% of those who worked in the media side said that they were on the left side of their father and on the left side of their classmates. And this is the process of the self-selection. On the other hand, if you ask media people whom they listen to, they mostly answer you that they listen to other media people. And this is a process of the self-selection. I am convinced if you ask 100 lawyers whether they were more on the right or more on the left side of their class in school, most of them will answer that they were more on the right side. And the same goes with engineers. So all people who do the hard things in society tend to be on the right side, and all people who comment the society tend to be on the left side. But they always comment things which they actually don't do themselves.
All right, we have 3 more questions. The first one will be asked by Morgan Messerschmidt, and then we'll have Dick, and the final one will be Torben.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sarrazin, for being here today. I'm a member of the European Parliament for the Danish People's Party, and very much share your ideas, not only the migration issue, but also against the euro and its malfunctioning and thereby destruction of the European economy. I'd like to focus on that in my question, because we know that many Germans share your views also on the euro and why it is an unsustainable construction. But it's striking to see that in the German political landscape there appear to be no political party to pick up this critique. How come it is so? How can it be so that there is no political party within Germany being an anti-euro party, not even an anti-EU, but an anti-euro party arguing against this construction? What could you do now as a greatly popular person, an economist, seeing this and publicly speaking against the euro? What can you do in order to transform this popular support you have into a political movement? And what can we do for the European Parliament and the Eurosceptic groups, which I belong to and represent? Thanks.
Well, these are actually 2 questions. The first one, the German past caused an national downstream in the German society, which is not a bad thing, and which is not being criticized by me. But it meant it also caused a pro-European feeling, which is mainstream in Germany, and which it is dangerous to contradict. So all parties, the Linkspartei, the Left Party, SPD, CDU, FDP, we name it, Grüne, profess to be the convinced Europeans. And because they are convinced Europeans, they believe in the European unity, whatever that means, and they believe in the failure or in the historical ending of the national state. On the other hand, this goes for the most politicians. On the other hand, most politicians, as well as most people in the population, are no experts on the currency matters, and it is difficult to transport the economic arguments which speak against the euro. I would be able, if I choose to present to you an argumentation the pro-euro, which would be for you difficult to speak against, because it is a matter for experts, and most people have the natural instinct to leave matters of which need expertise to the experts. So the majority acts by instinct. Polls in Germany show that if there had been the public vote on the introduction of the euro in 1998, the 70% of the German people would have voted against it. They had a public vote, and 53% voted against it. But people are also the conservative. If there were today a vote about the euro, most people would probably follow the advice of Angela Merkel and of other politicians that to stick to the euro for the same reason, because they are the conservative and because there are no experts on the matter. So for the euro to fail, it takes a very big crisis, and I'm not sure whether I would wish this crisis.
Yeah.
Hello, it's a very short question, and you have already talked about it. I was just wondering, all the Germans who have bought your book and who share your views, what party can they vote for? Are they left alone on the couch, or how can they express their political views?
The polls show that about the 60% of the voters for the SPD show my views, as well as 60% of the voters for CDU and for FDP. So, with regard to the voters, the majority in all parties shares my views. But on the other hand, it's one issue in Germany, and there are many issues. And if you found a party, and if you want a party to survive and to win more than the 5% in Germany, then you have to be a party for all important issues.
All right. Torben will ask a question, and he's over there, and I think Ole is very much dissatisfied and wants to ask one. Is there anybody else? All right. No, this will be it.
Yeah, one more question about the euro. How do you see the future of the euro, and what do you think Germany's position should be? Do you think Germany should step out of the euro and reintroduce the Deutsche Mark, or not?
Well, we have incurred certain obligations, and of course we have to honor contracts. And this is also the way out of the euro, namely to honor contracts. So if I were in charge as finance minister or as the chancellor or something like that, or both at the same time, this would be the best without parliament. Then I would proceed as follows. I would say that Germany will honor all the contracts it has signed. ESM, guarantees for Greece, whatever, but not a single cent more. That was that. So, and what does that mean? That means that all those countries are on their own with regards to their budgets and to the fiscal policy, and then they have a choice. They have the choice to do their homework, and if they don't get the majorities inside the countries to do that what is the necessary to stay in the euro without aid from outside, then they would have the choice to leave the euro. My guess is that some countries will leave and other countries will stay, but it depends on these countries. But it's not only the matter of the fiscal consolidation, they have also to increase their competitiveness, which is far more difficult and which takes far more time, but it would be their choice. And it might be, if one took such a course, that there would go a shock through France and through Italy, and that they would wake up and do what is necessary. It is also possible that they would, in the end, decide to leave the euro. I can't predict it, but in the end, we would have the currency union, which is very similar to that what we already had. We had a currency union, a de facto currency union, with the Netherlands and with Austria. I lived near the border to the Netherlands. Never ever since 1948 changed the exchange rate to the Deutschmark. The same went with the Austrian shilling. It changed several times, I'm sad to say, with Denmark, but this stopped at one point of time. So that I think that a currency union with Denmark, the Netherlands, Austria, Finland, that would be stable. But that would be the status quo ante. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Final question, Ole.
Thank you. My name is Ole Grøstrøm. It's now 68 years since World War II ended, the fightings ended. But still today, we do not have a formal peace treaty. There are still occupation forces in Germany. Shouldn't we make a formal peace?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I think we have formal agreements of one kind or the other with all of our neighbors, and I think that is sufficient. Thank you. Thank you.
And that concludes the proceedings for today. Thank you for coming here, and thank you for all your interesting questions. And please return when the Free Press Society has another meeting.